Hi guys, it's April, and I really need to talk to you about the Southern Book Club Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I think I've been saying his name wrong for so many years, and I apologize for that, but I'm gonna try and say it correctly now. I have so many thoughts and feelings about this book. Holy cow! I will do this review the same way I do all of my other reviews. I will have the non-spoilery section up front, followed by a whole dump of words that are going to happen because I am very passionate about my reading, okay? Don't judge me. It happened. So the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampire actually takes place in the same town as my best friend's exorcism, just a couple years later, from the late 80s to the mid-90s, which I thoroughly enjoyed because that is the time I grew up, and so seeing all of those references was highly enjoyable. This is the story of 5 mothers in the South who start a book club centered around true crimes. After a little bit of a snafu around their original book club, they decided to form their own, all about the gory details of real-life murders, and I have to say, it was quite enjoyable. It mostly centers around one of the mothers, Patricia, as she is dealing with her kids, her husband, and then the new guy in town. This book is very much set up like a campy horror grotesque film, and for that reason I really enjoyed it. The character development and watching all of these women deal with various different things in their life was very well done, and at the same time there was a lot of humor thrown in as well, which is probably my favorite style of horror. You have the grotesque, the dark, the gritty, alongside the giggles and laughs and the lighter side of life mushing together, creating this very jarring experience that is absolutely perfect. A lot of it reminded me of watching all of the pieces come into place in Final Destination for each of those really bizarre deaths. That is the storyline for this book. You knew all of these things were coming. It was just watching them fall into place, and then the end. I was covering my eyes and my ears and my face because holy cow, the things that happen. Each of the sections of the book are labeled after real life true crime books that the book clubs are looking into or what the women are reading. I love that little tidbit and watching them discuss some of these books. And I have to say, Grady Hendrix does horror so very well. I was squeamish through a lot of this book, but like I said, he does it in such a campy style that I am smiling as I'm squeaming, if that makes sense. I don't know, there is something about his writing style and the way he approaches the horror genre that just brings me back to when I was watching my first horror movies when I wasn't supposed to be and hoping my parents never found out. And maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia in reading these, and that's why I like his novels so much, but his writing style is so captivating. I just sped through this very quickly, couldn't put it down, needed to know what happens, and I like the twist he does with vampires. It was an interesting take on what that creature is. So if you like campy horror, if you just like a fun, gory time, I highly recommend this book. Plus, if you just like the idea of hunting down vampires and killing them, read it. So this is the point where I'm gonna kindly tell you that beyond here there be spoilers because I have a lot of things. I love the way that Grady Hendrix wrote Patricia. Just seeing her interact with her kids and try and figure out life. The humor of watching her kids grow up, and then the anxiety as she's trying to have her voice heard. Nobody's believing her. I just grasp onto her as a character because I think she had so many different levels, and Grady Hendrix made the tension come together so well that I related to her in a way that I don't think I should have related to her, but I did. And watching the strength of her character, but the flaws of her character come together in a scene of her squishing a cockroach in her ear. I had to tell myself that scene alone. Somehow in every single novel that I read from Grady Hendrix, I always have a scene in which I just can't deal with. And there were 2 in this one. The first one, of course, was that cockroach scene where the cockroach crawls into her ear and she has to squish it in her ear. And then the second one is when all of the women come together and hack up James in the bathtub. The description, the things that were going on in my head, all of it came together to a point where I was I was making noises as things were happening. I was clutching limbs, which I do quite frequently when I read Grady Hendrix. Grady? See, I'm already screwing that up. I do think that this book came to me at the perfect time. I needed something dark, but I needed something light. And this book hits both of those boxes for me. I think it is because of the humor in those one lines and the way the characters speak to each other. I like it. I like it so much. I think more people need to read it. And if you've gotten this far, I'm hoping you have read it so we can talk about it down below. I would absolutely love it. I think the last note that I'm going to say is I like the author's note at the beginning of this book where he's explaining why he wrote this book, because in My Best Friend's Exorcism, the parents are very, very hateable, but that's also coming from the perspective of a teenage girl. So it makes sense that the parents feel like they're not the best. And then he was just making the comment that he wanted to write a story from the parents' perspective, and that's how all of this birthed. And it makes so much sense, and I love it for it. And knowing that going into this read made it that much better, so I'm glad that little note was at the beginning of this read. I will probably be thinking about this book for a little while. I might have to go back and read his other works that I have. I'm also going to have to add this to my physical library at some point because I need it in my life. I do. Tell me down below your thoughts on this book. And of course, if you'd like to stay up to date with every time I upload, subscribe down below, and I heart you beautiful faces. Bye.